You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, special episode number 1. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley, and today is a special episode of the Chopped Podcast. So what makes today's episode so special? Well, first of all, today is my first repeat guest, which is Tessa Arias from episode number 1. Second, and obviously, this episode is published on a day besides Wednesday. I think that makes it kind of special, don't you think? And then third, Tessa and I are talking about something pretty exciting. It's called the Food Blog Success Summit. We talk more about it during today's discussion, but just to kind of give you an overview, the Food Blog Success Summit is basically a mastermind workshop. And Tessa and I are co-leading this on the Thursday before the Chopped conference. It's going to be this, creative, dynamic format where you can meet other food bloggers and learn what it takes to steer your blog in the right direction. We're going to have up to 10 bloggers who will be selected to be on what we're calling, quote, the hot seat. Anyone who is registered for the Food Blog Success Summit can apply to be on the hot seat, but only 10 people are going to be selected. And they'll share about their blog, what's working, what's not, and then we'll put up their site on the big screen and creatively brainstorm about what works for that site and ways to make it better. Does that sound scary or exciting? Or maybe a little bit of both. That's kind of how I feel. But I can't tell you how many times I've thought about how I wish I could just get this kind of feedback or even watch other food bloggers receive that kind of feedback. So whether you're in the audience or on the hot seat, we're all going to learn so much together. Tickets are now on sale, so head over to choppedcon.com to learn more. But that's not all Tessa and I are talking about in today's special edition. We're also discussing how to get the most from a food blogging conference, because I think it's something that we've all felt at one time or another, that we've gone to a food blogging conference and maybe not gotten out of it exactly what we hoped to. In fact, I can actually remember going to my very first food blogging conference, and I felt like in the end it was what my daughter would call an epic fail. It was kind of a shock to my system because I come from the healthcare arena background, and so all the conferences I went to there were pretty serious. And so when I walked into the doors of my first food blogging conference, I was very excited, and I remember feeling like maybe I had walked back in time to my high school days. It felt like, I don't know, there were cliques and in-groups of which I was not a part, and I don't know, it just all felt overwhelming and a little bit spirit-crushing all at the same time. I don't know, I left kind of feeling like not only was I felt like a complete loser, to be completely honest, and I also felt like I had wasted my money, and that was just terrible. I couldn't wait to get on that return flight home, and I just vowed never to let that happen again. And so I prepared more for my next food blog conference. And it just happened also that the next one that I attended was smaller. And I think myself personally, I think I like going to a smaller conference. But I can also say that thankfully, being more prepared for the conference made all the difference in the world. And, of course, there's always going to be one or two people or more that are a little on the snobbish side, and who knows why. Maybe they're just really busy or whatever. But there also may be some workshops that you're hoping they're going to be this really great thing, and maybe it's not as good as you thought it was going to be, But overall, I felt like I've taken away so much more from my food blogging conferences now that I take the time to be prepared before I go. So that's what Tessa and I are chatting about today. Everything from how you can save money on travel, what things to pack, how to create goals for attending your conference. I don't know, like how to help yourself step out of your shell even and meet new people, and some great follow-up tips for what to do after the conference is over. So what about you? Do you have some tips of your own to share from going to different food blogging conferences? If so, leave a comment on the show notes page or give a shout out using #ChoppedCon. So without further ado, let's move on to that discussion with Tessa. Hey everyone, I'm super excited to have my first repeat guest on the Chopped Podcast. Today, I'm talking to Tessa Arias of the site Handle the Heat. Tessa, welcome back to the Chopped Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. And, we talked way back in episode 1, and the topic that we talked about was becoming the CEO of your food blog. And it received such great response. I was so happy with it. And I think you got some good response too.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. And so you and I have been kind of talking since then, and we kind of, talked about the thing that, when you're a food blogger, you're like a small business, and as a small business, you need to be investing in yourself. And so one of those ways of investing in yourself is by attending food blogging conferences. And so specifically, we wanted to talk today about the topic of getting the most out of attending a food blogging conference. Because, you just, like I said, if you're going to spend the money and invest in that, you want to make sure you get the most out of that. Would you agree with that, Tessa?
Oh, totally. And especially since it's not an insignificant investment. And I think that there is definitely a way to be strategic and intentional about how you go about attending a conference so you can really get the bang for your buck.
I know that may be confusing to some people because they may have gone to conferences in the past or whatever, and they think, well, how would I not get the most out of it? But I have personally attended conferences, and I've talked to other people who have felt the same way, that they go and they feel like, they didn't get as much out of it as they want. And for me personally, I would say maybe because I felt a little overwhelmed by not knowing anybody in the room, just things like that made me feel like, I don't know if I really belong here or not. Maybe I'm not in the right place or something.
Yeah, I think like your personal emotions totally can sabotage you. And if you're not preparing yourself beforehand and coming in with a game plan, then you could spend all of that money and walk away just feeling kind of disappointed, like you said. And I know a lot of bloggers who have felt that way. So hopefully today we can share some tips to avoid that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought we could start out by talking a little bit about what are some of the benefits of attending a food blogging conference, so that people will get a kind of a grasp on why it should be a priority for them. And one thing I wanted to point out too is that the site Foodista conducted a survey in 2013, and they found that food bloggers who attend conferences have a higher number of unique visitors, and they have a greater chance of actually making money from their site. And before I say anything else, I want to make sure that I don't think it's causation. I think it's correlation. So in other words, going to a food blogging conference is not going to guarantee these things, but I do think it changes your mindset, and it puts you into this, I'm not just a hobby anymore. I'm taking this seriously.
Yes, I think any professional environment like that, where we're not just sitting at home in our sweatpants on the computer, it forces you to kind of pivot your mindset on it. And then not to mention the investment that you're literally making. And despite whatever you learn and whoever you meet, I don't know about you, but I always walk away from a conference feeling really inspired and motivated and really excited about being a blogger.
Yeah, it's like a mountaintop experience, I just connected with these really great people, and it feels wonderful, and I'm so thrilled that I'm doing this thing, So I think you're right. That's kind of one of the big benefits that you can get.
Totally. And then not to mention meeting other bloggers, because when you're a blogger, you're so isolated. You're often working completely alone, and you only know these people basically by their social media avatars. And so getting to meet these people in real life is amazing in itself. But I have made lifelong friends that from bloggers that I've met at conferences. In fact, I befriended Ashley from Baker by Nature, and she's now one of my best friends, and we just took a vacation together 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And I would have never thought that I would come to have such great friendships from people that I've met at conferences. But that in itself, is worth every dollar that I've ever paid for a conference.
It makes sense because you're there together and you guys share, you're sharing a very similar passion with this whole group of people that you're around, and that is food.
Yes, and it's so exciting to be around like-minded people who get it, because when you talk to your husband or your friends or whoever, and you're complaining about comments or
SEO.
silly things, SEO.
their eyes roll back to the back of their head, like not again.
They just glaze over. So it's so fun to be around people who get it and who are passionate about it, and it's it's people you would never meet otherwise. If you weren't online or if you weren't blogging, you would never have the opportunity to meet all these amazing people. So it really is something special.
You're right. And Tessa, okay, I'm going to just lay a confession out here. And I think this is another benefit of meeting people in person. And that is sometimes I have a tendency to create a story about somebody I don't even know. Like I see their avatar or I see their picture and I just think, well, they look kind of stuck up, or whatever I might create about them. And then I meet them in person and I just love them.
Yes.
And so I think, it's maybe, we've heard this before, like you could send an email and it's just not as personal as like going over and talking to somebody or whatever. So I think it's the same concept here. Like we see people on this two-dimensional website, and as much as they might try to push their personality out there, it just doesn't come across, and then you meet them in person and it really means a lot.
Yes, totally. And there's just so much that's lost when you're not speaking to someone in person. And I was actually thinking about exactly this before we hopped on this podcast. And I was thinking to myself, the way that people are online can often also be totally different than how they come across in person.
You're right.
And, there are things that people might censor on their blogs or not really discuss or share. And when you meet people in person, you're like, oh my God, you're even cooler than I already thought you were.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. So that's another great benefit. I think another benefit would be like getting to meet mentors, like maybe, I don't know, a good one probably for a lot of food bloggers would be to get to meet Ree of the Pioneer Woman, or other people that you've maybe held up on a platform that you think, oh, I would really love to meet that person someday, or I'd like to do what they're doing. I would really love it if my full-time job was being a food blogger, and you followed some people who do that, and then you get to meet them in person. I've read that that's called the windshield effect, is when you've got people right in front of you that are doing the things that you want to do, and it has an impact when you get to meet them in person.
That's really interesting. And I think another thing too is just knowing that you can be in the same room as that person, that they are a human being just like you, and they probably came from a very similar beginning as you, and hearing their story, that's really inspiring to me.
Well, and that's a very good point. And of course, that we also have to talk about the learning that goes on, because there's some really informative sessions that go on at food blogging conferences.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Food photography, video, styling, food styling. I mean, there's storytelling. There's a lot of great sessions that go on.
Yeah, and I think with anything, and this is kind of what we led into this whole conversation with, what you put into your conference experience is exactly what you're going to get out of it. So if you really take it seriously, you can still have fun and go with the flow, but if you go into those sessions ready to learn, ask questions, participate, take notes, and actually take action with what you learn instead of just absorbing it and moving on with your life.
Yeah.
If you really put these things into motion in your own blog and business, it can have crazy awesome effects.
Oh, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about the things that cause people to feel overwhelmed, so that they're not doing that. They're not. It's the reason they're not getting everything they can out of a food blogging conference. And I know that you reached out to the members of your Food Blog Academy to ask questions about this as well. What are some of the things that you think that people are saying when they think they're not getting everything out of a food blogging conference that they could?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, from what I've heard from Food Blog Academy members and from being at conferences, is that people often feel like when they arrive at the conference, everyone already knows each other, or that there's cliques, or that they feel like they can't approach people that they really were looking forward to meeting because there's just so much going on. And to combat that, something that I really enjoy doing and has worked really well for me is to make a game plan and sit down and write specific goals of what you want to walk away from the conference with. If that is a new friend, if that is a mentor, if that is a brand that you're working with, just having one specific goal, it doesn't have to be anything huge, makes it feel like once you've met that person that you wanted to meet, or you've introduced yourself to that brand, once you've done it, you're like on a high and you feel like you've accomplished something, and it's kind of a domino effect. And it gives you confidence to kind of be that person who can introduce herself to a stranger and have a conversation.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And what about somebody who's particularly shy? Like, it's hard to put yourself out there if you're an introvert, don't you think?
Yeah, but I think also most bloggers probably are more introverted. We are working by ourselves, and
Yeah.
even though it's we have social media and stuff, it's not really as social as walking into a room full of people you don't know, which
Yeah.
can be terrifying. And I think as long as you remember that everyone else is having that same experience,
Yeah.
everyone has moments where they're feeling shy or anxious or overwhelmed, and this is something that we actually discussed in the first podcast interview we did, but stepping into an alter ego and thinking of someone that you know, whether it be like a friend or a family member or a celebrity or a fictional character, who can enter a room and talk to anyone, even if they're all complete strangers, and win everyone over and has great stories to tell, and everyone just loves that person. If you think of that person and you kind of embody them and kind of create an alter ego for yourself, it's a part of yourself that can accomplish those things, but maybe you really have to draw from a place of inner strength to get there. And something else I like to do as well, and especially for women who are listening, is something physical that you can do to kind of boost your confidence and step into that alter ego, is attach some sort of physical thing, like say you have a pair of glasses that make you feel really intelligent and cultured, or maybe red lipstick, or maybe you get your hair professionally done, or a manicure. Anything small like that can really make a big difference in giving you confidence to be in a situation like that, which can be so overwhelming.
Those are great tips. I think, kind of encouraging yourself to have that self-confidence. And if there's some visual cue like that helps, that's really great.
Yeah, and I think also just always having the focus be on what you can offer to a situation and how you can give, and focus on the people around you, and instead of thinking, oh my God, they're going to think I'm such an idiot, I have nothing to say, I'm not interesting enough, all of those kind of, doubtful, fearful thoughts that we can all have. I think if you flip the switch and make it all about how can you offer that person a better experience? What can you do to add value to this conversation? Always thinking what you can do for others.
I like that, because that is changing your mindset to be more inquisitive. Sometimes when I've been in situations like that, I find if I could just think about, what's making this work, or why is this person here, and asking them about their blog, and I think that really helps me. I change my mindset entirely.
Yes, totally. And then it also takes the pressure off of having to come up with things, because if you're focusing on the other person, all you have to do is listen and ask questions. And if you're asking questions that are, specific and engaging and aren't just, your run-of-the-mill small talk questions, then you can really get to know someone in a short period.
I listened to this interview with this guy who talked about well, it's kind of a strange thing, but he talked about just getting rejected a lot helped him to be stronger. I don't know if we talked about this in the last one or not, but I think this could be good practice for your blog too, because if your goal is to start reaching out to brands more, or if your goal is just putting yourself out there more on your blog, sometimes our fear is what holds us back from those things. And so I think being at a conference could be a great way to start practicing, exercising that muscle a little bit. And what's the worst that happens is somebody doesn't talk to you. Oh, well, go talk to somebody else.
Yeah, they're lost. And I think that's such a great point, too, because the other thing as well is that what you do online and what you do in person, sometimes there's a disconnect. And when I've been to conferences and talked to people about my blog and their blog, we've discovered things for each other that, hey, you do that? Your readers would love to hear about that. I would love to hear more about that. You should totally write a post on that. Oh, I never even thought of that. And so you can learn a lot about others and yourself as well in that process, I think.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's change topics a little bit here and talk about, you had mentioned earlier that it can be kind of a significant investment going to a food blogging conference. And I thought it might be fun for everybody to hear us brainstorm a little bit on ideas on how to help reduce the cost of going to a food blogging conference. Do you have any favorites that you've either done yourself or heard others talk about?
Yeah, definitely. It can definitely get expensive. And especially if you're not making a lot of money with your blog yet, which is what you're hoping to learn about by going to the conference. Something I always do at food blog conferences, at any type of networking event that requires a hotel room, is I always have a roommate. And it can be a little bit awkward and uncomfortable if you're rooming with someone that you don't know very well. But not only does it save you a ton of money, but I think it makes the entire experience so much easier because you kind of have a partner. You're entering those rooms in that conference with someone, so you don't feel so alone and awkward and like you have so much on your own shoulders. And if you are someone who tends to be pretty introverted, then partnering or rooming with someone who is more extroverted can totally change your entire conference experience. And I don't know about you, but I don't think any blogger would want to avoid having to spend so much money on the hotel stay because it can really add up.
Yeah,
So
the thing I like about that too is that it could give you a better chance of actually staying at the hotel where the conference is.
yes, and I think that although you might be able to save money staying at a non-conference hotel, the experience that you get by staying at the conference hotel is pretty much priceless.
I agree.
There have been so many instances where there's little hotel room parties
Yeah.
or sleepovers or
Impromptu gatherings in the bar, in the lobby.
Exactly,
Yes.
yep. And you just end up meeting and having conversations that are as valuable, if not more valuable, than anything that you could have learned during the organized sessions or panels.
Excellent. So we definitely agree that having a roommate is really an important thing to do, if you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing that I think I've heard people talk about is actually finding a brand that would sponsor their trip in exchange for a write-up on their post or something like that.
There are several ways you can do that. You can have a brand sponsor your trip to the conference in exchange for promoting the brand at the conference or on social media while you're attending the conference or in a post afterwards or some sort of combination. And then I know other brands too, they would like to have someone at the conference to report back on what they actually learn and the state of the blogosphere and how bloggers react to partnering with brands and offering them insight into our world.
Ah, very good. The only thing is I think you got to be careful with is making sure that you're complying with the conference rules about those kinds of things. So if the brand asks you to hand out something, I think you got to make sure that the conference is okay with that.
Oh, definitely. And there are different types of tickets that can be bought as well. So that's something that you'll have to look over with the brand and the conference organizer.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think another option would be, if there's a way you can drive, I mean, that adds up a lot really fast. If you can drive instead of flying, or if you're flying, make sure you get your tickets far enough advance that you can get a cheap flight.
Yes, and I always go whenever they're doing the big traveling potluck in California.
Yeah.
I always drive there because I'm in Phoenix, and it's a 6-hour drive, so it's a pretty long drive. But I can bring back as much swag as I want because everyone else doesn't remember to leave room in their suitcase for all the swag that you get. And so I end up taking it back in my car.
Well, that's actually what my next question was going to be. Now that we've decided, let's say we've decided on a conference we're going to go to and you're getting ready to leave. And so these are the things that we should do before we leave for the conference. And that was definitely number one on my tip, which is to leave room in your suitcase because you'll go home with some swag and you want to have to go, I can't take that.
Yes, totally. And you might even win some things.
Yes.
And there's so much swag at these conferences. It's awesome.
Yes, so definitely leave room in your suitcase. Another thing that I've heard is very good is to make sure that you bring business cards.
Yes, always have business cards, especially for when you're talking with brands, because the other bloggers you might talk to, you may already know them or they know of you, but with brands, it's important to have that level of professionalism as well. And the whole conversation, I think, can be elevated to another level when business cards are exchanged and you're kind of telling each other that you are willing to invest time into future conversations because now you have each other's contact information.
Exactly. And the thing that I think that goes very well with your business card is your elevator speech. And that is, at least every time I've gone to a conference, like the biggest question you hear all the time is, what's your blog about? And so if you have a 30-second or 20-second or 15-second thing that you can say in response to that, I think that makes a big difference.
Yes, and practice that.
Yeah.
You'll feel like an idiot, but
right.
you'll come off as so much more poised and people will really understand what your blog is about. And especially when you're talking to brands, they'll immediately know whether or not your blog is a good fit for their brand and future partnerships. And I think also for yourself, it's a good idea to come up with a quick elevator pitch or, understanding what you blog about in a way that other people can understand.
Well, that's a great point, Tessa, because just anytime you're in the world and you talk about what you do, someone could ask, "Oh, so what's your blog about?" And you should have that answer ready for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to market yourself and your blog to anyone at any point in time, anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so what about computer? Do you take your computer when you go?
I do take my computer only because I want to be able to take notes if I'm doing, in-depth sessions, and especially on things that are really technical, like SEO, things like that. One of the sessions I participated in at a prior Blog Her Food conference was about recipe development, and I found it to be so useful. They gave you the exact steps, everything that you need to do to develop a professional caliber recipe, and I wrote like 5 pages of notes on that. And I would not have, I should say I typed it. I would not have been able to write all of that. So having a computer or something that you can take notes on is handy, and taking little cues of who you're meeting and what their blog is and who they are on Twitter, and making sure that you're staying up to date on social media can be really helpful too. And if you don't want to be on your phone all throughout the conference, being able to come home to your hotel room at the end of the day and recap everything for yourself, and making sure that you don't miss out on scheduling a follow-up email to anyone, or making sure that you're following everyone on social media that you've met, things like that.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if you've got your computer or you can actually still work even.
Yes, and that's other thing too, is that if you are taking time away from your blog, your business, or even another job to attend the conference, you don't want to come back home and feel so overwhelmed, not only with all of the feels that the conference gave you, but all of the stuff that, has piled up in the meantime, especially with emails.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, emails. Yeah, when you've been gone a few days, it's like, crazy.
Yes.
So let's talk about cameras, because, of course, the cameras on our iPhones or whatever phone that we've got, our smartphones, are really good. And so we may not feel the need to take our DSLR, but do you ever recommend that somebody would consider that?
I would consider it if you will be planning on attending any type of photography workshop or class or anything. And also, that's the other thing too with bringing your computer, is that if you're learning about photography editing or anything like that, having your computer handy with the programs that they're covering in the session can be really useful. So I would take it if you plan on learning from it, or if you're in a beautiful scenery, or you're making some sort of vacation out of it and you want to have beautiful photos. Otherwise, I don't bother with the camera because it's so much to lug around, and I want to really enjoy all the moments in person and not through the lens of my camera.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then, of course, the thing to remember with all of that is not to forget your chargers.
Yes, and if you have, actually, I was at a conference once, and one of the pieces of swag was a wireless charging unit for your iPhone.
Whoa.
And that saved everyone's lives because there are a limited amount of plugs in a conference hall. And, if you bring in some sort of non-conventional charger, like a wireless one or a case that charges, anything like that, it's going to save your ass.
Yes, what a great idea. Yeah, I have seen people do that a lot too. And, your phone just dies like that when you're out and about. And
if you're not connected to Wi-Fi, that's the other thing too, is the second you get to the hotel, hook up your phone to the Wi-Fi, because it'll save so much battery. You'll have a better signal for, being active on social media for everything.
That's a good one to point out, because I am home most of the time on my internet access here, and I don't even think about it when I go somewhere else to switch over. So it is a very good point.
Yes, I only recently started thinking about that because I kept going over my phone's data plan, so I'm very aware.
Oh, that's the motivation right there, yeah. Okay, so now let's imagine that we've prepped for the meeting, and now we're there. So what are some things that can help us stay on target during the conference itself?
Well, I think what I was mentioning before, having a plan, some sort of game plan with specific things that you want to walk away with, specific people you want to meet, questions you want to ask, make a note of all of the sessions you want to attend, when they're happening, because once you get there, it can be so overwhelming. There's so much going on. There's so much people, and It's easy also, I think, to become influenced by the people that you've automatically befriended once you get there. And if you really wanted to attend a certain session, but everyone you've just met is going somewhere else for the afternoon, it's important to also stick to your guns and make sure that you are walking away with what you intended to walk away with.
That sounds like good boundary setting guidelines. You got to have your own boundaries.
Yeah, and your own goals, and it's easy to kind of succumb to peer pressure in such a social environment.
If they're true friends, they're going to understand that you have a different session you want to go to.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I love it. And then I think what you said earlier, which I really want to emphasize here, is to make sure that you have your goals set out. So for me, I would probably say not just one person. I would probably I'd want to meet 10 new people a day or something like that. That would make me feel really good by the end of the conference.
Yes, and I think also it's not disingenuous to have a list of people that you really want to meet because you admire them or you think they have something to offer the world, as long as you approach them with that same sense of offering value in response and making sure that you're not making it all about yourself or what you're getting out of the conversation or the relationship has to be mutually beneficial. And I think, too, if you're looking to meet bloggers who you feel are much more advanced or experienced or successful than you are, then what I like to do is if I know something about them, I do a little research on them. If I know, for example, that they're writing a cookbook or something like that, I will research some articles that were recently published about cookbooks or some books that I've read personally that are really helpful on the subject. And you can say something like, oh, I've heard you're writing a cookbook. How's that experience been? And then say, I found this really helpful article that I think you will just find life-saving for that experience that you're going through right now. What's your email? And I'll email it to you after the conference is over. And doing things like that, it's not only offering yourself up to someone as a motivator and someone who is helpful and isn't selfish, but it also gives you something to actually talk about, because once the conference is over, unless you really hit it off with someone or you have some sort of inside joke to talk about, those emails like, hey, it was so great to meet you, kind of fall flat.
Yes, exactly. And having some little follow-up dialogue is just great.
Yes.
Oh, I love that one. That is really good. And that makes me think too, something we could have said in the before you get to the conference category is a lot of times conferences will let you know who's going to be there, especially if obviously it's a speaker, but you can go usually at the Eventbrite page or whatever and you can see who's going to be attending. A lot of them will have a private Facebook group for people who are going to that session or that conference. So doing a little bit of homework, looking at the agenda before you go so you know what sessions you want to go to and who's going to be there. I think those are all really good tips.
Yes, and also being sure you're aware of all the sponsors that are there and making sure you're following all the brands on social media and making yourself familiar with everyone. And you don't have to memorize who's who and, you'll figure it out once you get there, but having some sort of background can be really helpful and instill more confidence in your conversations.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a conference where like maybe you find out the brand that you really want to work with is going to be there?
Yes, that happened to me like 2 years ago. I found out KitchenAid was going to be at a conference I was going to, and I was able to establish a paid relationship with them afterwards.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's definitely possible. I was so intimidated and nervous, but just meeting someone in person, it pretty much elevates you in that brand rep's mind because you're an actual person that they've communicated with. You've seen them, you've heard their voice, and you have such a stronger connection than cold pitching, through email to a brand who you don't even know if that's the right person to pitch.
Right. And so to have that talk about face-to-face, we were just talking about with bloggers, but with the brand, I think that's very helpful as well.
Yeah, and you can also get a really good feel for what the brand is looking for, how they like to work with bloggers, what kind of bloggers they're looking for, and why they're there in the first place. Do they have a specific launch or product or offering that they really want to get out there, and what's their goal in attending a conference? And if that's something that you focus on immediately when you meet a brand rep at a conference, they're going to appreciate being able to share their brand's message because that's what they're being paid for to attend the conference. Yes. That's what their brand is paying, thousands of dollars probably to attend the conference and sponsor.
Right.
And it gives you an opportunity to showcase that you understand how brands work and that it's not all about the blogger. When you're working with brands, you have to be, it has to be a partnership.
Exactly. You know, when I was applying to graduate school, I read something I thought was a very good advice. It said, you are not the admittance committee. You're not the committee that decides this. They are. So go ahead and apply. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is, don't let, whether they're going to work with you or not is really not the point. You want to create that relationship. You want to get to know them. They may have some criteria that you don't fit, but then again, you may be a perfect fit. So go talk to them.
Yes. Another thing too with brands is that the people who attend the conferences on behalf of a brand, they might work for a PR agency where they represent tons of food brands. And so just because they're not there on behalf of a brand that fits with you and your blog doesn't mean that they don't have a client who would be a perfect fit for you. And having that relationship with that person can be extremely valuable in the long run.
Oh, that's great. Tessa, I just love talking to you. This is wonderful.
But you know what? I actually have a question for you as someone who organizes conferences and gets brands to sponsor your conference. What do they look for? What is the main goal for a brand who's sponsoring a conference?
Oh, well, definitely they are looking for engagement. I mean, obviously there is great engagement for brands on the, speaker level and that kind of stuff. But I think what they're really looking for is, I think they like to see different kinds of bloggers. And so some of those may be people, I could see where somebody who's a smaller food blogger might think, well, no brand is going to want to talk to me. But really, actually they are. And I think they are looking to go to these conferences to spread their net out a little bit and not just see the same food bloggers they're seeing all the time. Otherwise, why would they spend the money and be there at that conference?
Yeah, it's a huge investment for them as well.
It is a very big investment. A lot of times they're paying money just to be there, let alone the fact that, they're also paying, sometimes several $1,000s to have their logo up on the screen or whatever to show that they're a supporter of this conference. So I've had different brands that are looking for different things. Some of them want a lot of social media shares. So I think, to be a good food blog conference attendee, the more that you can tweet and mention the names of that brand, in my mind, I could see where before I did this conference myself, I would have worried I was pestering people. But no, they love it. They, put your name out there and say, hey, it was great to be there and see KitchenAid there as well. And they love that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So that's my take on it. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. Another reason to make sure your phone's charged. You can be connecting with brands on social media and showing them how your audience responds to them. Yeah.
Another thing I know that brands really like is the write-ups that bloggers do after the fact. And so that's actually a great segue for us to go into now that the conference is over. What are some great things you can do after the conference? And I think a blog write-up where you maybe mention some great people that you met and also talking about those brands that you had a great interaction with, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is I've always kind of been iffy about doing write-ups because they're not recipes. And I know my average reader probably doesn't, but the interesting part is that I've actually gotten a lot of emails when I've talked about the behind the scenes of blogging and kind of the business of blogging that people find inspiring and interesting and engaging. And if you think about what half of reality shows are about, it's usually someone's behind the scenes of someone's business or industry, and people find that interesting. So, you'd be surprised at what people, will actually read.
Well, that's a very good point because I bet your audience is impressed to know, first of all, that you're investing in yourself to learn new skills. And like you say, I like that. I would certainly be intrigued by people, the behind the scenes stuff that they're doing.
Yeah, and it's like you said, too, it shows that you're taking this seriously and that you want to be a better blogger for your readers.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. That's really good advice. Another thing that I really like to do is I keep those business cards in a certain spot in my briefcase. And then when I get home, one of my biggest priorities is to respond to people and say, hey, it was great. I had a great time meeting you. I think that, that follow-up, that people get to hear your, they met you and they enjoyed meeting you. That's really great. And sometimes, even if it's somebody I didn't get a chance to meet, I will still, if I somehow got their email, or sometimes I've got their business card some other way, or I know their website so I can go look them up and say, hey, I saw that you were at this conference. I didn't get a chance to meet you in person. I hope we can meet, get a chance to talk some other time.
Yeah, I think just the fact that you were in the same physical space as someone else instantly connects you with someone way more than just being a blogger.
Yeah. I like to say conversations are like campfires. They need some kindling before they get stoked. And so even that after the fact kind of stuff, I think it has a big impact.
I love that. And I think that's also, it goes to a larger point that relationship building is a process, and you can't just hand your business card over to someone and have a relationship. It's something that has to be fostered, like you said, and grown, and it takes time. And those are the best relationships. And the other thing, too, is that you can work all day on SEO and photography and all of that kind of stuff, but this is something that I've been taught by my own mentors and business professionals that I look up to. There's nothing as important as your Rolodex in any business. And it's the relationships that you have that truly make a difference. And it doesn't really matter when, everything else matters, of course, but if you don't have those relationships and those connections, then, there's not a lot of value that you can build or offer.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think it's so easy, like you say, we're sitting behind this computer every day, and it's so easy to forget that part about, making sure that we're staying connected with other people and building that Rolodex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you start to view that as a part of the tasks that you have to do every day for your business,
yeah.
And, I pencil in time to make sure that I'm connecting with my blogger friends and I'm keeping up to date with them and their lives and their projects. And, maybe if there's a way that I can help them with what they've got going on, I know that they'll respond and offer something to me, later on. But it's just being able to put yourself out there and put out something good in the world in your own industry. That I think is just a good feeling too.
That's a really good point, Tessa, because here's the thing, like we spend a lot of time on social media. We're putting our stuff out there, and a lot of people actually that we're connected with on social media are these other food bloggers. So it seems like as much time as we spend investing in getting to understand social media and how it can deliver traffic to us, I think spending that time to build the relationships with these other food bloggers should be important as well.
Absolutely. And there's so much to learn, and we can all inspire each other and support each other. And just for example, I released an ebook this past week, and the support that I received from other bloggers and their sharing of the launch and everything like that, it made my experience so much better in this whole huge, stressful project. And that support meant the world to me. And if I hadn't put myself out there and introduced myself to people at conferences, reached out to bloggers I admire on social media, then I may have never received so much support. And so in order to get, I think a lot of people, when they go to conferences, especially when this comes out, they feel like sad for themselves, a little bit down, that they haven't been approached by people, or maybe they don't feel like they're a part of those cliques that are happening. But you really only have your own, you can only be responsible for how you behave. You can't be responsible for what other people are doing or how you're being treated. And so if you don't put yourself out there and bring those situations to yourself, they're not going to happen. And so it's really your responsibility to make those connections, build those relationships, and not rely on other people for that.
Oh, yeah, that is very powerful. And I think that really raises a great point, and that is, when you help other people, it's not that you're doing things to get back, but it does, I do think it's true that when you give like that, you do receive, and it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there are some other things that you can do in follow-up to a conference. In addition to sending an email, you can also subscribe to the new friends that you met. You can subscribe to their blog. You can leave comments on their sites. You can follow them on social media, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, and I think too, like if you have, maybe on Twitter or somewhere, you can create a list of the bloggers that you've met in person.
Uh-huh.
And, what I like to do is make sure that if I'm choosing things to share on my social media, recipes to share on Pinterest or Facebook, I want to make sure to share my friends and make sure that we're supporting each other, and that if I can send a little bit of traffic someone's way, maybe by talking about a new friend in a blog post, then that's awesome. And that's the only way that we can really build our whole community up, because a rising tide does lift all ships. And so if you think about how can you help these people that you've just met, and how can you make sure that you're going to see them at the next conference because their blog's going so well, that you're showing them support.
Oh, that's great. So we're kind of here at the end of the interview. Are there any other food blogging conference tips? I mean, we covered a lot, but is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, I think we did cover a lot. The only thing, a question that I got asked by a few different Food Blog Academy members was actually how to go about choosing a conference to attend, since it is such a big financial and time investment. There are definitely so many different conferences, and they offer so many different types of things.
That's right. And I think for me personally, like I like to go to a smaller conference. I don't necessarily like to go to the ones that are larger, but that, I mean, of course, you can go to larger ones and get a great experience out of them as well. I'm just saying for me personally, I like a smaller food blogging conference.
Yes, I'm the same way. And I love those little conversations that can be had with, it's more intimate, and you really get to talk to people and not feel so like you're on the spot if you ask a question or involve yourself in a conversation. I mean, there are definitely, and I think too, just for us, that's personality wise, it's probably what meshes best with us personally.
Right.
But for other people who maybe are more extroverted or have different strengths in their personality, attending a huge big conference might, be wonderful for them.
That's true. And the benefits of a big conference is there's more brands there.
Yes, there's more brands and even maybe publications as well. I've been to a few Blogger conferences, which are really big, where there are magazine editors that you can speak to directly.
Right. So see, there's pros and cons to each one. I think it's really hard to answer that question in any kind of blanket way. But I think if you know yourself well enough and know what you're looking for, you could probably reach around to other food bloggers that have maybe even do a search on reviews of Blogger food or reviews of different conferences and see what people write up about them afterwards.
Yes, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So it's just, rolling up your sleeves and, if somebody's written a review about it, why not send them an email and ask them, a few direct questions that you've got.
Totally. And then maybe they'll be at that conference and you can meet them and you'll have a friend already.
Already, one down, nine more to go. So any other things that we should cover?
I think we've covered a lot.
Okay, good.
I think hopefully this was helpful to everyone who's listening, because conferences can be so crazy overwhelming, and that's totally okay to feel that way. You are not alone. You walk into that conference room and are, blindsided, basically.
Well, actually, that leads me to another tip that I did read. I'm trying to think who I read that from. I think it was Baked Brie. Is her name Brie Grossman?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think on her site recently, she mentioned something about how if you are introverted, give yourself permission to not do the extracurricular social activities at the end of the day, because she would go back to her room to recharge. I thought, well, that's a good tip for somebody who, they know they're going to get overwhelmed by the conference. Give yourself an hour or two in your room at night. That's good.
That's a really good tip. I'm that way too, because I need alone time.
Yes,
otherwise I start to get cranky. So
it's really weird because I am extroverted, but I'm kind of on the line between introverted and extroverted, and so I love being around people, but I need a break from it.
Yes, and that's important. I think that's important for anyone. And taking a break also gives you a moment to kind of reflect on what's been happening, if you're meeting your goals and if your plan is going the way you wanted it to, and then also taking little notes about who you've met, what you guys talked about, who you plan on emailing, scheduling those follow-up emails into your calendar so you don't forget, and little things like that, so that you're not so caught up in the moment all the time.
Exactly. And then, of course, don't forget to save all those receipts, because attending a food blogging conference is tax deductible.
Yes. Your airfare, your hotel, your conference ticket, your food, all of that should be documented and saved.
That's right.
Good point.
Tessa, one of the reasons I was really thrilled to have you on the show today is because we're thrilled to announce that we are going to be launching, as part of Chopped Conference this year, the Food Blog Success Summit. And for anybody who is curious about what this is, let me just give you a little explanation. If you've ever been to a mastermind group or you've seen something like that, it's an opportunity for people to creatively brainstorm a problem that they may be going through with their blog, or to experience what other people are going through with their blogs. And so we're going to sell tickets to this event, and then a few lucky people are going to have the opportunity to be on our hot seat, and Tessa and I are going to be there. We're going to listen to that blogger talk about their site and what's going well for them, and maybe a problem that they've got and what they're trying to overcome. And we're going to break down and brainstorm and creatively kind of give feedback on that blogger. It's going to be something I think everybody's going to benefit from.
Yes, absolutely. And it's going to be so much fun to hear what people are struggling with and get together to think of some creative ideas for how we can overcome those struggles, and we're all going through so many of the same things. So it's like you said, I think it'll be beneficial for everyone who's there. We're going to learn a lot and discover a lot, and I'm so thrilled to be doing this with you.
Me too. And I think, I can see where some people might be a little nervous about being in a situation like that. But I honestly think we are better off when we push ourselves a little bit and we, put yourself out there. We want to know what we're doing is right or wrong. And I think having other people give you some feedback is really, really critical.
Yes, and everyone has different experiences and strengths and weaknesses. And by coming together and really putting ourselves out there, like you said, we can explore those areas and get honest feedback that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, because it is so isolating to be a blogger, and we're not surrounded by colleagues or coworkers who can give us, thoughts or feedback or opinions. And whenever I've done this and put myself out there, the feedback that I've gotten has been pretty much revolutionary and has made such huge strides in my business.
Oh, that's so true. And so if you're somebody who you feel like your blog has kind of got, maybe it's stagnant a little bit, or maybe you've hit a plateau, or you're just not growing as fast as you want, or maybe you were previously growing fast and you've started to feel a decline, or whatever, maybe just, whatever your goals are with your blog, even if you're not the person selected to be on the hot seat, you can learn so much just from hearing the advice that's given to the person that is on the hot seat. We all have similar issues that we need to overcome. And so I think it's going to be something beneficial to everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm. And then, having a more intimate setting like this, where everyone, is on the same page and we're all getting feedback and giving each other constructive criticism, and, breaking up into smaller groups to talk about specific things. It's those instances where I always learn the most, have the most growth, and find the most inspiration and motivation.
Oh, I'm so excited about it, because not only just to be in the same room with you, Tessa, but but also just for, to think that, people are out there, they're trying to make their dreams come true. And I think this can be a big part of making that happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Tessa, normally I'm asking people at the end of the interviews these fun questions, but since you've been on the show so recently, I thought what I might do instead would be to ask you two things. And one is, if you could share a little bit more information about this book that you just published. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. So I just released the Ultimate Cookie Handbook, which was based off of my Ultimate Guide to Chocolate Chip Cookie series that went crazy viral on Pinterest and Facebook. It was the whole series has been visited by over 500,000 people since I originally published it. And so I constantly still, even after posting so much about cookies, would get questions and comments and frustrations and emails from my readers asking me, why didn't my cookies turn out like the photo? They always turn out flat, or they always are dense like hockey pucks. What am I doing wrong? And I could answer those questions till I was blue in the face, but I would get another one 5 minutes later. And so knowing that this information was so valuable and helpful to my readers, it was pretty much instant knowledge that I should write a book about it. And as I've already written a physical published cookbook, I knew I wanted to maintain the creative control over this, because this whole idea and whole, cookie obsession is something that is really settles deep in my heart, and I wanted to, have control over it, be able to release something quickly. It took me about 3 months from start to finish, and that included hiring a designer and basically testing all the recipes, photographing everything, writing, hiring an editor to edit it, and developing a sales page. And since it's been released, I've sold, I think, almost 500 copies. Wow. And it's currently $15, but I did an introductory price of $12. So, the small investment that I made in hiring a designer and, the cost of ingredients and my time has been completely... I've completely got a return on that investment. And now I have this new form of passive income that I have complete control over. It's not connected to advertising or to CPMs or anything like that.
And I remember we talked about this, that one of your goals is to someday not have to deal with all that. So
yes, and so this is one step closer to that. And I plan on doing more ebooks in the future, and especially with this topic and this idea of teaching people how to become experts in one type of recipe, like cookies, I might do brownies next or yeast breads or something like that. I've received such great feedback from my readers. They've really enjoyed it. And the best part, which we were talking about earlier, is that I created a private Facebook group for all of my customers who have purchased the Ultimate Cookie Handbook, and getting to know my best readers better and hearing directly from them in their own words, seeing their pictures, their Facebook profiles, getting their feedback on things, and hearing about what they want from me and my blog, even beyond this ebook, has been priceless. And that in itself has been worth the investment in my time and money.
Well, and that's huge. We've all talked about how do we know what our readers want. So that sounds like a great way of doing that.
Yeah. And the best part is that they're having fun. They're getting to talk to each other, share tips and recipes, share photos, and I just kind of get to sit back and watch it all happen. And it's totally mutually beneficial. So
that's
very awesome.
So the other question I wanted to ask you is about your Food Blog Academy. So how's that going?
Oh, that has been so much fun. I took a bit of a step back from Food Blog Academy and promoting it and creating newer content for it while I was doing the ebook. But now I am working away on an ebook module on how to create your own ebook and how to go about writing and formatting and selling and what platforms to use and how do you find a designer to hire and all of the things that came up while I was doing it and what I was able to learn, so that hopefully whoever joins and finds this module about ebooks can have a much smoother experience and get to that point of being able to make money independently and have that passive income even faster and easier.
Oh, it's great. And I can speak from personal experience. I've been, a member of Food Blog Academy, and I have really enjoyed it. I got great benefit out of it. So I really
so
recommend it.
glad to hear that. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So Tessa, how can people find you online?
Well, they can find me at my blog, which is handletheheat.com, or at Food Blog Academy, which is foodblogacademy.com. And then I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and pretty much every social media you can imagine. I just recently joined Snapchat, so you can find me there too. But your best bet is to go to my blog for all of my social media handles, because some of them have different names.
Excellent. Tessa, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Oh, thank you, Marley. I had so much fun, and I hope to see whoever's listening at future conference, maybe at ChoppedCon.
Thanks to Tessa Arias for being my guest on today's special episode of the Chopped Podcast. If you'd like to read more and see the links, I've listed some of the notes from today's episode on the show notes page on choppedcon.com, where you can also see the link to sign up for the Food Blog Success Summit. If you like the Chopped Podcast, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. It really means a lot and helps the show so much. Also, you can spread the word about the Chopped Podcast using @ChoppedCon on Twitter or Instagram, or even Facebook. Your shout-outs really mean a lot. You inspire me, so I hope today's show was helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.